Hello everybody, welcome back to another video here on my channel, and this week's video is going to be a book challenge type video. It is going to be swapping my screen time for books. This challenge is going to go a little bit different because if you've seen my last one, you might have thought maybe my screen times were kind of low. These ones are about half of what they were, so I'm going to combine a couple days, and that's also because it is Thursday and Josh comes home on Monday, so I'm going to try and fit this whole week worth of reading into those 4 or 5 days. I wanted to do this challenge because this month we have just been very busy making videos, having fun, taking photos, and exploring, and we're also gearing up to go on to our first technical vacation together here in like a week or two. I technically have only read one whole book this whole month, and we only have 11 days left of the month, but thankfully that book was 743 pages or 763 pages, I can't remember. I am currently in the middle of a book, or almost in the middle of a book. I will be starting off with that Beach Read by Emily Henry, but I am on 133, so I'm not halfway yet. This will be the first book in this challenge. I'm gonna put my times up on the screen so that you guys can see it, but first we're gonna start off with Sunday, and I only was on my phone for 2 hours and 18 minutes. On Monday it was a larger day at 3 hours and 16 minutes. Tuesday was an hour and 22 minutes. Wednesday was 2 hours and 45 minutes. Thursday was 2 hours and 37 minutes. Friday was only an hour and 46 minutes, which was very, very good. And then Saturday was 2 hours and 46 minutes. So a couple of those days I might combine like the 2 hours with the 1 hour and just make it about 3 to 4 hours I read a day. And that way it's just a little bit easier, and I can also finish this closer to when Josh comes home. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start on today's, which is only 2 hours and 18 minutes. I honestly have not updated about this book at all. I didn't even give any preference if you do not know about this book. So let me kind of fill in a little bit. One, this is my first Emily Henry book. In the beginning, I found it a little hard to kind of get into it because her writing's just a little bit different than what I had originally expected. Right off the bat, also coming from the books that I did read, I just was having a hard time getting into this book. But I feel like after 20 or 30 pages, because I was reading pretty fast with it, I all of a sudden started to enjoy it. Not necessarily love it, but definitely it was so far like a 3-star where I don't necessarily want to put it down, but it's not sometimes enough to keep me, so I will put it down, if that makes sense. I'm gonna read the back of this book real fast just in case if you do not know anything about this book, and I will give a little quick summary, but obviously no spoilers, and so far there's nothing to be spoiled at all. Augustus Everett is an acclaimed author of the literary fiction. January Andrews writes best-selling romance. When she pens a happily ever after, he kills off an entire cast. They're polar opposites. In fact, the only thing that they have in common for the next 3 months is that their neighboring and beach houses broke and bogged down with writer's block. Then one hazy evening, one thing leads to another, and they strike a deal designed to force them out of their creative ruts. Augustus will spend the summer writing something happy, and January will pen the next great American novel. She'll take him on field trips worthy of any rom-com montage, and he'll take her to interview surviving members of a backwoods death cult, obviously, in parentheses. Everyone will finish a book and no one will fall in love. And then it says, really. I do like on the cover, I like the little bit of detail when it comes to like, it looks like handwritten. I think that's kind of intriguing. And then secondly, just like the little bit of font that's inside of this book, just like on the title page, even on chapters. There's actually a slight change of plans, and currently I'm getting ready to go meet Josh. So I'm going to be on this trip, and I don't know how much I'm gonna read, so I'm going to pick this up later, and I am so sorry. Hello everybody, it is technically supposed to be day 2, but we are just going to restart this. So yesterday I was supposed to read for 2 hours and 18 minutes, and because of the last minute deciding to go and visit my husband on his trip, I am going to kind of restart that, and so we are going to do that today. I only read for a few minutes yesterday, maybe like 5 pages at the most, because then I started packing and cleaning, so I didn't get very far. I feel like today we are just going to continue on with that challenge, but just in a completely different location. As of right now, my husband's at work. I am just going to sit here for a couple hours, read a little bit, and then maybe we will go out and enjoy the day. I want to do a first hour update of this book. I'm not going to go into any details because I just ran into what would be a spoiler. It was like a little, not necessarily a full plot twist, but it was more just like information that was kept a secret that you get to read about and understand about one of the characters. I honestly did not see coming at all, and it's not necessarily something huge. I mean, it is kind of big, but I just was not expecting it. So an hour in, and we are now at 188 pages. I still have an hour pretty much left to read. My goal is to get to 200 at least, if not 240 or 250, but I guess we will see when the time comes. I am home, if you cannot tell. I only technically read for one day. I'm sorry about everything that happened. Just last minute, my husband and I decided that maybe we should go on the trip and come out and visit him, so we ended up packing up and doing it. And on the first day after I got there, it was the only day that I could actually continue this challenge, and that's because the next 2 days we would get up, I don't know, maybe around 8 or so and be out the door, and then up until 7 to 8 p.m. and then we'd go eat and get supper because of the air shows. And then when we finally came home, it was like we were just so exhausted, we just wanted to get into bed, potentially go to bed. That fourth technical day I was there was the morning that everybody was leaving. My husband was getting on a C-17 and I ended up having to drive back the 4 hours to our home. So I did not do anything but that first day after I got there. So I did do my 2 hours and 18 minutes. I started off, I think I finished telling you guys I was around 180 or so, and I still had an hour left in the challenge. I went out with our son and then I came back home. And when we were back home, we were waiting on Josh to come home. I stopped at 244 pages. So we are going to pick back up today, multiple days later, and do our 3 hour and 16 minutes worth of reading. And I'm going to start off on page 244 of Beach Read. I feel like this book is picked up a lot more since getting to at least 200, and it's not a bad book. I think it's just more about not necessarily being in a slump, but just being still into another world that I was reading. Just finished Beach Read. It took 2 hours and 17 minutes. So for today, we only have to read for an hour and 31 minutes, I do believe. That's great. At least we finished one whole book. I'm going to rate this at the end of the video. I like doing that just because I can do like a whole refresher of all the books that I read in this challenge. There were a couple parts that I was not expecting. Since I've never dealt with that before, I didn't know how to react, except for being kind of embarrassed. So just take that with a grain of salt if you know what I'm talking about, and it's more because it is a romance book. I know this is not the original cover. The cover actually kind of makes me upset because this was made, or at least published, in 2006 or around 2006. For the most part, we mainly only had flip phones, and if we were gonna have cell phones. So this cover is not accurate. Apparently they revamped the cover, and it is Stephen King's The Cell. I can insert the two most common covers that I remember, and I remember the original first edition cover more than the one that has like the Nokia on it. Hello, booger. I'm gonna put it around here. I'm pretty sure it's more thriller than it is mystery. I think it's more along the lines of Christine and The Stand, from what I could tell, because it seems like there's something that spreads from a cell phone, like for some reason when you pick up a cell phone or something like that. Devastating phenomenon, and it basically goes to whoever uses a cell phone. I feel like that's kind of similar to The Stand, except for The Stand was like some kind of sickness. We are going to read our last hour and a half with this book book. I'm gonna try and get to like, I don't know, at least 50 pages. I want to say I'll be over 50 pages. It's in sections. I'm gonna try really hard to get to the second section, which says Malden. I'll try to get to that because that's a good stopping point, and technically the cell starts off with the pulse. I want to stop right here. I'm on page 8 and 9. This paragraph right here on page 8, it's not necessarily a spoiler. Read the back, it just, I don't know, it just talks about like weird stuff, but it's not necessarily something that I don't think at least is going to be a spoiler. That whole paragraph, a third of the page down on page 8 of the whole book, and we technically start off on page 2. So 6 pages into this book, and all of a sudden a guy bites a dog's ear off. And then basically at the very end of page 8 and then all on 9, this lady who was getting ice cream tries to get to this guy who's like the soft serve, or this ice cream guy. He's in an ice cream truck. So he's inside his truck and she's trying to like get him. She's grabbing him and he ended up like moving backwards with like the inertia of her going after him. And then she ended up like, I don't know, like tripping because she had high heels on and she had a poodle in her hand with a red leash, and all of a sudden that poodle took off. A black limo came out of nowhere and, you know, ran the dog over. So yeah. Alright, so this is that book. This book is definitely gonna be like the more kind of gruesome, apparently. Dang, we're starting off strong in this book. Welcome to day 3 of this challenge of swapping my screen time for books. We are on that second part. I did not read anymore. And today we are just going to do a real chill day. Apparently, I only have to read for an hour and 22 minutes. So I feel like I could finish this next part. Josh is on his way home. I have just under 10 more pages left of this book, or at least to this next part, and basically I'm over my time for the day, but that's okay. We are just going to hopefully quickly read the rest of this. With this book, there is just so much that I honestly want to talk about, but I don't want to spoil a couple of things that happen in this book. But so far, I'm just amazed. It's very good. It's not amazed like, oh my goodness, it's like the best book. It's just something that I haven't read. I haven't read a thriller or anything in such a long time, and I'm really enjoying it. There are some parts that are very, what do I want to say, like gruesome, or they're not necessarily super descriptive like every single bit, but they are just a smidge descriptive. But I can see where other people might be insanely disturbed by some of the stuff that he's talking and writing about. Following technically just the 3 characters, it starts off with this guy named Clay, and he meets this guy named Tom. They're both together in the very beginning of the story where the ice cream truck was. And basically when everything started breaking out and everybody went crazy, well, a lot of people went crazy because of the cell phones, they were together and a police officer helped them, and then they ended up going to Clay's hotel that he had paid a room for. They ended up meeting another guy and they only stayed on the bottom floor before they left, but they also found this girl. Her name is Alice. So it's basically just these 3 characters going along in the book so far, and there are some things that I don't want to spoil, like little minor things about like some of the characters that they do meet along the way, keeping me hung on to this book. That's why I wanted to read till this second part, even though technically my time was up. We will start tomorrow with this 3rd part with Dayton Academy. Alright everybody, I just came back inside. Sorry for the lighting. It is 10:39. We started Dayton Academy, which is technically on like 156, I do believe, and we just stopped at page 200. Now I only have 240 pages left. I moved down here just because my husband is playing games with his brother, and also apparently right now Lily decides she wants to eat her food that's been sitting all day. Got to page 278. I'm done with my time today. I'm going to continue a little bit more, about 30 pages, because there's a new section called Kent Pond. It starts on 306. I feel like this book, with having the sections and then me not having really long times, has worked out really well, because at the most, if I haven't finished exactly on a section, I finished 20 or 50 pages before, and then I would just continue reading, and then that way the next day we can start on a whole new section. I know that my husband and I are going a lot of places tomorrow, so hopefully I can get this done. It might be dark when I record that, if I even record any of it. Right now in the section with the Gayton Academy that I just read, pretty much the three main characters, or at least the main character and the two people he met along the way, started off in Boston, where all the phone crazies, as they say in the book, and they are making their way to Maine, and that is because the main character, Clay, he technically has a wife and a son. I don't know if it's like a divorced wife or just a wife. He just says they were separated at the time, but he is worried about his son, so he's working his way up to Maine. They're trying to get there, and they are currently in New Hampshire. That's where this academy is at, and while they stopped at this academy, they learned a lot about these phone crazy zombie like things, and this whole book is getting really interesting. It's kind of got that like Armageddon or kind of like the Walking Dead type vibes. I'm actually really happy that I picked this book up. We did it. We finally finished Stephen King's Cell. I do believe the last time I updated, I think I said I was on like 278, but I was just going to finish until 306, even though my time was up, and we were going to get to Kent Pond. I ended up reading from Kent Pond all the way to the end of the book, which is 306 to 449. And I'm not gonna lie, I really enjoyed this book, and it had me the whole time. And I also was like, a different feeling, like I was more intrigued, and I was just excited to get to the end. I have to say I'm a little disappointed. It just was not the ending that I thought it was going to be. It was a little bit of a different twist or like curveballs that I honestly didn't see coming, and it made me really think I was going to rate this really high, but now I'm thinking about changing my rating. I'm a little conflicted just because of the ending. I'm a little bit disappointed about how it did end. We are finished with this. At least that's another book done. Today, we only have to read for an hour and 46 minutes. It's not very long. It's not very much. All the Lovely Bad Ones. I read this years ago, and I don't honestly remember this. Great book, because I know for the most part I'm going to like it. It might be a little like kiddie-ish. The font is pretty big, and also the chapters and everything like that take up a lot of space. So I feel like we can get through this whole book today, and then our last day start a whole new book and finish out this basically in the beginning or in the middle of a book. We are back for our last day on this video. I feel like this whole week has taken so long. Well, technically 6 days, since the first day I started, and then I tried to do the first and the second day, but when I went to Riverside for that hair show a couple days later, we came home and then finally continued with this video. Yesterday, we were supposed to read for an hour and 46 minutes, and I picked up all the Lovely Bad Ones to read because it was only 182 pages. I did finish this book. I started remembering a lot about this book. It was a good, fast-paced, little tiny read to go after that Stephen King book I had just read. Today we're supposed to read for 2 hours and 46 minutes, and if you've been here on my channel, you might know that I've been trying to tackle for the first time ever the Harry Potter series. I am on The Order of the Phoenix, which is book 5 out of 7. Unless you count The Cursed Child, then that's 8 books in the whole Harry Potter series, and so we are going to try and tackle this today with our almost 3 hours worth of reading. This book is 870 pages long, so I'm definitely not going to finish it for this video. This will be the last book, and also I will be a quarter of the way through it maybe. I'm going to read my time, and then I will report back and also do a whole wrap up of this whole video, all the books I read, my star ratings, all the pages, everything like that. On a serious note, I lost my mounting piece for my tripod that attaches the actual camera to the tripod at LS Fest, so now I'm very limited on where I can put my camera until I get a new tripod, which is fantastic. So right now you're seeing a really high level. That's because you're sitting on a little TV tray type table. But anyways, let's read for a hot couple minutes before I end up getting up our son. We are finally done with this video. I'm actually kind of excited. I feel like this video has went on forever, but we did finally get to where we needed to be in Harry Potter Order of the Phoenix. I just stopped on 250 because it was a nice chapter. I enjoyed this book a lot. I really like Goblet of Fire, but I feel like this book is more, not necessarily 100% accurate compared to the movie, but I feel like it's got a little bit more that's more equal to the movie compared to like the Chamber's Secrets, where there were so many things that were just so different. The first one did really good. Chamber's Secrets was different from the movies. Well, I guess the movies were different from the books. We're not gonna really talk about this too much, except for that I read 250 pages and we did our time for the day. Let's go ahead and end out this video, and I want to recap what all we did read, what my star ratings were now that I've had time to kind of think about them, and also do a little bit of statistics. So first off, I want to say overall with the time that I did read, and I'm just calculating the time that I was supposed to read, not any extra that I did or did not do. So I know technically the page numbers would be a little bit off, but we read for 16 hours and 50 minutes, which is very good, but I feel like in the course of a week it isn't as much, because even the last time I think it was close to 25, I do believe. And in a way we did read a total of 4 books, or you could say we read 2 full books and pretty much 2 halves, so 3 books total, I guess you could say. First we started with Beach Read, and I was on page 133 when I started this whole video off. Overall, I did enjoy this book. In the beginning I was a little iffy on it. I was just super into Harry Potter at the time because I just read The Goblet of Fire and I was coming off of that book, so I was still into the world, and I got really excited for the ending of Goblet of Fire and the beginning of Order of Phoenix that I did not really feel like reading this book. I quickly got into it after I think like 20, maybe 100 pages. A lot of big booktubers were reading this at the same time I was. I just ironically had my son pick between this book and People We Meet on Vacation, and he picked Beach Read, so I did choose to read this coincidentally at the same time as like everybody else was rereading this for their channels. I know Haley Pham was, I'm pretty sure Sarah Crowley was too. I did enjoy this book a lot, especially towards the end. I liked the little bit of twist information that you ended up reading about, and it kind of threw me. I was not expecting all of it. It was kind of really interesting. With this book, since I started on page 133 and there are 358 pages, I read a total of 225 pages, and I also rated this 4 stars. I did enjoy it, but it wasn't necessarily one of my favorites. I have not found a true like favorite romance book between this and The Honeymooners. I do like this a little bit more. After Beach Read, I did read Cell by Stephen King. This is a 449 page book, and in the beginning I feel like I was getting into it and it was just so much stuff happening at once. It was like page 8, I do believe, where everything was going crazy and there was more than what I told you. I just didn't know how descriptive I could or could not get without it being too gross. Basically, there is a few scenes in this book that are a little bit gruesome, but other than that, I feel like it was actually entertaining. I really enjoyed this book, except for the ending. I'm kind of left off on what the heck happened, and I heard apparently this is how Stephen King does a lot of his books. He just doesn't know how to end a book, apparently, and I can see it with this one because I honestly don't like how it ended that much, but I am rating this one 5 stars. This was really entertaining, and for me, I was like flipping pages. There was a lot more extra stuff that happened and a lot of information and events that went on. I'm gonna rate it 5 stars because of how I felt during when I was reading it. Then for a quick, easy little read, I read All the Lovely Bad Ones. This is 182 pages. It's basically about these 2 siblings, twins, I do believe, Travis and Corey, who go to live with her grandmother who owns an inn, and they hear that she's not necessarily getting a lot of business as she might like, and the inn apparently used to be haunted, so they decided to try and play some pranks, and in the process of doing that, to try and get their grandmother more people at the inn, they actually wake up the spirits that are there. So then you go through how the inn was once a poor farm and some of the things that happened, and how mean this lady who's on the front cover actually was, and how she treated a couple people, not just her brother, and then I think one other guy. There was like 3 people total. They end up having to put the spirits to rest, and it is a very short, kiddie-ish book, but at the same time it was very lighthearted and easy, fun read, just especially coming from the book like Stephen King's Cell. So because of that, I did rate it 4 stars. Lastly, we already talked about The Order of Phoenix, how I read 250 pages of that, and obviously I can't rate that book right now. We read for 16 hours and 50 minutes this whole week. I read a total of 1,106 pages between the 4 books, which is actually pretty impressive in my opinion, just because that's 1,100 pages that I would not have read if I would would have Nana sat down and took the time, extra time during the day to read, it would have been maybe just 20 pages every single night. So because of that, I'm very thankful that I was able to finish 3 books. I feel like we got a good amount now for a wrap up, and so I can do that at the end of the month. Hopefully I'll finish the Order of Phoenix and maybe one other book before the month ends. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Be sure to tune in for any other upcoming videos I have on my channel. I'll see y'all next week, and God bless.